All right, let's read some IMs. Pokemon Go to Hell. Sam, I'm sure you're going to get a lot of IMs today about Jank. I think if you haven't seen what he had to say about you, you should watch it, but I don't think it needs to be public. TYT seems to be trying to go in a different direction, and criticism should be about their coverage and policy, not about personal disputes. I, yesterday, did see some clips from, I guess, something that happened like on Thanksgiving or whatnot. I got to be honest. I don't really care. The last, any type of communication I had with Jank was, I think, like in July. And it was in response to like the, I don't know, fourth or fifth thing that I had seen that I found sort of offensive and wrong. And to be honest with you, I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it was about trans stuff, but it could also have been about, they're chasing that fake Venezuelan story. I don't remember when it was. Maybe that was in the fall, so maybe it was not that. It was probably the trans stuff. And I made it clear to Jank that he was invited to come on the show, and we can have a debate, we can discuss whatever. I mean, and he made it clear to me that he was not interested in that. He was mad. He was very, very mad about all of it. And I will just say, like, I didn't hear any issue that he had with the stuff that we talk about. He may have issues with me personally. That's fine. I don't care at all. I told him 8 years ago, it was in October, I remember, because I think he was at that conference. And he said, how can I get you and Jimmy to stop fighting? And I'm like, get Jimmy to learn a thing or two about what he's talking about, because he's not. He's the stuff he's saying, he's promoting Peter Thiel for the Supreme Court. He's saying that it doesn't matter who gets to appoint judges. And this is going to be a disaster. And by that point, he was also talking that Hillary Clinton had Parkinson's and that Seth Rich was assassinated by the Clintons. And, my attitude was like, you could criticize Hillary Clinton, and you should, but when you promote right-wing memes like that, you are doing a disservice. It doesn't matter the other stuff you're talking about. You're basically promoting right-wing memes and narratives.
Even if within your coverage, right, for Jimmy, even if you bake in some plausible deniability. I mean, I've always maintained that what you cover is just as important.
Well, that's what editorial. That's the editorial decision.
Editorial discretion, right? So, like, in any issues we've had with that Venezuela story, which now has been thoroughly debunked.
Any apology about that?
None. It doesn't seem to be the case. But like that, even if you're saying, okay, there's nuance in this story, it's about what you choose to cover and what you choose to give credibility to, or assign some sort of
when you do one story like that.
Yes.
I mean, yes. Now, TYT was built on a certain amount of sensationalism. That's fine. I think it's helpful. We do sort of like, we have the fun half. And so, that's that. I understand that. But when you promote a right-wing narrative and you focus on a story, and I've told this story about Rush Limbaugh, focusing on, like, I remember this vividly. He was talking about, like, all the enviros are worried about so-called global warming. And he found this story about, like, they put this reflective stuff on a glacier in the Swiss Alps because they wanted, and then as he's reading it, he hadn't read it carefully, but he looked for that one tiny story that he thought would promote a narrative, a false narrative. And it actually happened that it was the ski resort that did it because they were trying to deal with all the melting of their glaciers. But the point being that, like, and so I took issue with that with him, and I am perfectly willing to go on his show and talk about, debate any of this. I have no problem with that at all. He doesn't want to come on this one? Fine. I'm willing to go on his. but I don't care about the rest of the stuff that he says. He can introduce me as whatever he wants to introduce me as, but if he's willing to have an engagement on questions of like crime, on questions as to whether like there's something fundamentally different about MAGA or the Republican Party today than there was 8 years ago when I know he was vehemently against it. Whatever. I'm willing to discuss that. I'm willing to discuss trans issues. I'm willing to discuss crime issues in the way that they played in this. I'm willing to discuss, whether he thinks that we are extremists. I would also say the dirtbag left was this different cohort than us. I mean, I think that was more like the Chapo and Come Town and this and that. But I don't care about that either. None of that's important. I'm happy to go on that show at any time and debate these issues. But after that, I don't care about any of this. Honestly, it's a waste of my time. And so...
Live from the Poly Market studio in LA.
I understand. I understand that they were sponsored by.
Well,
Poly
you're a
Market.
grifter, apparently. That's the thing. Is look, I've worked at both places.
Put it this way, I'm willing to put a bet on a overseas betting market.
Yes.
I'm willing to put a bet that he won't invite me on to discuss this.
I mean,
well, can I just make a quick point?
Yeah.
The whole Venezuela story, which people should watch, Jose is it Jose not a J on YouTube or Jose on YouTube's takedown of that? Very good, long, in-depth thing they should apologize for. But they didn't cover it because they cared about the state of what was going on in Colorado. They did it because they wanted to throw shade at all the left media who doesn't take these crime stories at face value like they want to.
Yeah, and then taking it at face value, I think showed itself. It's just like crazy to me. I mean, look, I didn't see all of it. I did see when he called you a grifter, and I think if we're grifting, we're doing a pretty bad job. But like the notion that you bring up Jimmy, I think he has a misunderstanding of what you were even communicating when you're saying you're trying to take Jimmy's audience. Like, you're not trying to say you want to take it so that you make more money. I think we've been kind of hands off with this stuff with TYT because largely we don't like to really go after our allies. And usually and especially because I had personal relationships there, but we get IMs and people want us to respond to it. And increasingly we're going to have to, because they have decided that they're basically kind of doing a much more, I would say, centrist channel at this point. And so when they're giving credibility to right-wing talking points, we want to respond to that, not because we're trying to make money. And I know, and
I'd
same
like to
thing with
announce
Jimmy
Matt
Dore.
Pack. I got a new political action committee that I'd like to announce.
Not to make money or running for president or whatever, like not to do any of that, but to basically try to de-radicalize people by mocking them and by changing their minds. When you were talking about Jimmy, and I know this because we've had these conversations and because we do it with right-wingers, it's because you have to combat these bad ideas head on and try to change people's minds in that regard. And Jimmy has shown himself since that time period, since you had that conversation, to be a grifter in and of himself. And you were right about that. And so if we're responding to somebody peddling right-wing talking points, the problem is the peddling of the right-wing talking points.
Yeah, and look, people can have different opinions, but I think the crime stuff was pretty clear. If you look at Donald Trump's, like one of the biggest cohorts of people who voted for Donald Trump, I had it somewhere around here. They believed that crime was at an all-time high in this country. And it's not even remotely close to that.
Yeah.
Not even remotely close. It's, if anything, like in the past 40 years, it's probably still pretty close to an all-time low. But how did they get this idea in their head? Now, was it TYT? No, of course. It was Fox. It was a huge right-wing machine. But where are you putting, if it's like, if it's, and he rightly, he says like he's the biggest, progressive thing out there. If the biggest progressive online outlet puts that, if it's a feather or a 5-pound weight or a 100-pound weight on the scales of that, it's a negative. It's bad. If you're out there saying that, like, that the in terms of women's sports, or the amount of, like, subjugation you feel because somebody somewhere supposedly called you a birthing person, like, how real is that, and how much of it is a narrative that has been created, and are you playing into it, and are you promoting it? Now, if you get to the point where you say, like, I'm optimistic and enthusiastic, why am I feeling so good after Donald Trump wins the election? Well, you're suggesting to people that these people are being earnest. And, like I say, we were talking about this with Rick Perlstein. When Kennedy's out there saying, we're going to get rid of these, unhealthy things in the food. It's too processed, or there's too much corn. Our ag policy is bad for big agriculture. Because of big ag. I think it is a reasonable argument to have. Like, how do we leverage this? Are these policies good policies? Are they bad policies? Are they policies that, if we promote, will it expose these people's failure to do this stuff and hurt their electoral chances or whatnot? Because, the fact of the matter is, like, never for a moment do I think that Kennedy is going to do these things, A, and B, never for a moment do I think that he's going to be a net positive. And so there's, like, a nuance in there. But that's not what is happening. That's not what we're seeing. And so, like, that's it. That's it. As far as, like, the grifting, like, anybody who has watched this show can make their own assessment and go and look. It's just, like,
pretty clear.
It's the politics more than the commerce that bugged me more. And I would just say, you mentioned the delineation between TYT and what Fox News does. Fox News, October 9th, progressive journalist unleashes on liberal intolerance that drove her away from the Democratic Party. They fed that machine. So if now's the time for recrimination, fine. Let's let it get shaky. Let's actually look at we were too supportive of trans people. You fed propaganda about immigrants and this thing in October of 2024. So yeah, maybe there is some grading that needs to be done here. And I'll be honest, I sleep pretty well. I don't know about how if I was on Fox News talking about how intolerant the left was a month before the election, how good I'd sleep. But maybe it'll work for them.
And the left is not online people that are pissing you off. The left, and what I think we're trying to do is give a voice to activists, to unions, to people who are doing work, to folks like Astra Taylor. All of these people who have dedicated their lives to trying to make people's lives better, they know intimately what the challenges are. And so, like, we're going to question those things, but we're going to be a vessel for that as well. So, like, it's so media focused. No media company, no show is the left. And I think it's ridiculous to claim that that's the case. And, like, to say, we'll button this up, but I was a part of the journalistic team where they fundraised from their audience. And a lot of the core proposition was to combat Trump, who then ended up getting elected. And I remember the journalists that were being hired as I was reporting on the inauguration down in DC. And this was like, okay, as a part of this company, we're going to be resistance and we're going to fight Donald Trump. And then to turn around and basically roll over on your belly or roll over on your back and show your belly to Elon Musk and be like, hey, we could work together on this, even if it is to say, what you're saying, Sam, to call out his hypocrisy. I do think it's a betrayal of the core brand proposition, and frankly, for the millions that were fundraised from an audience that cared about this kind of thing.
But look, as far as that part of it, I don't have much interest in getting into that. But again, I will just say, for the last time, and we will address, when a show, any show for that matter, it comes to our attention, if they are promoting some type of, like, fundamental mistruth, And we think it's helpful to use that show as an example of what the actual reality is. We will not hesitate to use those clips or talk about it. But I don't give, like whatever. Run your business, do whatever you got to do. I don't care about that shit, honestly.
Live from the Polymarket studio in LA.
All right, we'll also play that clip, but we got to get just the volume is a little bit loud. But all right, so don't IM us more about that unless there's like something specific.
To reopen the channels of communication for other stuff.
Toronto David, any chance of a restock for the 20th anniversary mugs? Are we out? Maybe. We still got it.
So bad at grifting.
Oh, right.
All right. Voicemail is off. We can take phone calls. Shaky Gurga, you don't attack Hassan because he's too hot. I mean, Duber, I think the fact that fake billionaire Edward Gregorian's profile talked about social justice is instructive of who Russia typically tries to pay off semi-leftists who are looking for money and justify taking it one way or another. Edward Gregorian, Matt sleeps well because of his MyPillow.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. We haven't seen any offers like that, so I'd be surprised who's getting that money. I do know, like, the Vanguard boys have talked about getting money from I can't remember which billionaire who's splashing out.
Oh, that was the guy who was funding Door, who was anti-vax.
Yeah, exactly. And their contribution, which a few $100 a month, dried up after they decided not to take the anti-vax route.
Good for them. That shows integrity.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.